Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. So Aliexpress strikes again with yet another random unknown figure. This time we have a really cool looking Oviraptor. And I was pretty excited to see this figure because we don't get all that many Oviraptor figures. Like, there are a few out there, but there's not all that many. I will say though that this one's a little bit ugly as far as, like, I really don't like the coloration they've used on it for the most part. I don't like the tones of green or anything, and I feel like the figure is just absolutely aching for a repaint or at least maybe a dark wash to be applied. But at the same time, you know, it's a pretty fun sculpt. I will say also though that it needed more feathers. Like, of course, straight away that's one thing we could pick out, that the figure would have looked nicer with more feathers as opposed to just one random area of feathers on the arm. At least they could have given it like some tail feathers or something, I feel like, to match the feathers on the arms. Could have made it look a little cooler, a little more, you know, nice. But what we do have, regardless, is a very cool, very interesting looking scaly version of an Oviraptor. And this is a very similar figure to the recent Pterosaur and Stygimoloch that I had reviewed, where it's kind of a rubber, although this one's a really hard one compared to the others, but like it just genuinely has the same feel, and it can bend and articulate, I guess, a little bit. There's like some fuzz or something on it there, but it's very similar in the material used to those figures. So I think maybe whoever created the Stygimoloch and that Pterosaur recently that I had reviewed maybe made this one as well. And I hope I keep seeing more of these figures. I hope they make more because they're definitely pretty fun. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look at this right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Oviraptor, you can see that it does look really quite nice actually from the detailing standpoint. Like, there's some beautiful texturing to the skin throughout, and we also have some very nice detail there in the beak area of our Oviraptor. The crest as well looks really nice. We have a beautiful reddish tone of color up there, but it transitions very smoothly to a lighter coloration here at the edge. And I do like that quite a bit. We can also see the nostrils are sculpted out there for the Oviraptor. And we also have the eyes painted here with a yellow, given a big black pupil and then a white spot. There is no gloss coat, so I guess the white spot there is supposed to insinuate kind of like that potentially realistic eye shine, but wouldn't have been my first choice as far as that goes. I would have preferred a gloss coat. The detail inside the mouth is fairly decent. You can see the tongue in there as well as some teeth, but the teeth are not painted at all. So that is a little bit of a downside for the figure, but there is at least a pretty nice realistic looking tone of color used for the inside of the mouth. Pretty interesting look with this very strange looking dinosaur staring at us here from the front, but again, you also have some brown that kind of borders around the eye there. The majority of the face is a green, but it's been kind of applied with a dry brushing, so like there's some lighter color underneath that helps to make the detail pop a little bit. It's just not that great of a green coloration, I think, and maybe a darker wash could have looked nicer than the lighter coloration there on the underside of the skin texture. As you start to move down into the neck, though, you can see a brown stripe pick up, and then we have some more of that brown that kind of just shows up sporadically throughout. Like, there doesn't seem to be any specific design to it. It's just wherever they felt like applying it, it is there. And you can also see the skin texture and everything looks fairly nice as you move down the course of the neck. You can also see some like tensing and stuff in the neck of our Oviraptor. You can see the throat here on the underside of the neck and lots of creases and wrinkling and stuff in the neck as we move down that course of the neck. You can also see some creasing and wrinkling there in the neck region here as the Oviraptor has its head turned to the right. Hopefully we'll see skin stretching over there more so than creasing, but I guess we'll have to wait till we get there. As you move down into the body, you can see that we have some alternate variation of color as we have kind of like a really light brown, almost bordering on a peach color showing up here and there, as well as some more of those brown, those darker brown stripes, and then of course the green, which is like the primary body color that's dry brushed over top of that lighter color to make it's actually kind of like a light green and then a darker green over top to make the detail pop. As you move down into the arm does look fairly nice as far as the detailing goes, and again has some nice looking skin texture and some muscle definition in the arm right there. You can see the feathers, of course, are leading off of the arm right here. They're painted pretty nicely and also sculpted quite decently. They're painted similar to what we saw up there on the crest with the red and then transitioning to a lighter coloration there at the tip. As you move out into the hands of the Oviraptor, they as well look quite nice. We have some nicely painted nails with a black, and the Oviraptor is stealing an egg, of course. Very similar to the Papo Oviraptor as far as the running away with an egg type of a position that we have for it, but that's kind of like a go-to, I would imagine, for an Oviraptor. It is unfortunate that we don't see any paintwork here really on the undersides of the feathers, which definitely does not help the figure out at all. We can see the rib cage a little bit here in the stomach region. Again, as we move back into the body, you can see the hip bone up here. You can also see the spinal column is elaborated running along the back of the dinosaur. There is some nice muscle definition. They've kind of highlighted that muscle definition with those stripes, but because they threw those stripes everywhere, it doesn't really stand out with the highlighting of that area. It's just kind of there. Pretty much lost in the shuffle, I would say. As we move down the course of the leg, you can kind of make out the kneecap a little bit right there, as well as the calf muscle, and again some more of those stripes running down into the foot. The foot does transition to a darker green. We have some nice scoots down the toes of the foot, and the nails are kind of painted with a black, but they're fairly sloppy as far as the way it's applied, but it is a very nice, very bird-like foot sculpt right there. You can also see there is a dew claw present, and they have painted it, which is definitely a plus. As you move up here into the tail, you can see the skin stretching off of the tail very nicely as that Oviraptor has its leg pulling the skin as it's taking a pretty long stride right there, obviously running away with the egg that it clearly just stole from somewhere. And again, you can see more of like those skin creases and stuff. As you move out the length of the tail, we do have another shot of that brown right there, and then that nice mixture of the greens and even some tones of that kind of peach type color right there showing up within the detailing there of the tail. And you have a very nice bend in the tail, a nice turn for the tip right there. Nothing overly dramatic or unrealistic. I feel like it looks pretty good. The detail here on the underside also looks fairly nicely done. I would have preferred maybe an alternate shade of color for the underside, but it all pretty much is painted the same way as what we saw on the upper side. Again, the paintwork here of the face looks pretty decent. The sculpt definitely looks very nice right there. As you move down the neck, again, we have kind of like all of those creases, so we don't really see too much going on as far as like stretching of the skin or anything in the neck due to the Oviraptor having its head turned to the right, but it does still actually look really quite nice, and I do quite like the sculpt of this Oviraptor. As we move down, you can pick out the shoulder blade a little bit right there. You can see more of the stomach region on this side because the leg is trailing over here, showing off a lot more of the detail of the stomach. I feel like you can't pick up on the rib cage as nicely over here as you saw on the previous side, but it is definitely still present. I think a lot of it has to do with the not so great paintwork of the figure as to why you can't pick up on, some of the minor details like that. The arm looks pretty much the same over here as it did on the initial side because of course it's running with the egg in the hand, so it's pretty much going to have the same position on this side as what we had just seen on the previous side. The feathers again look pretty nice there on the arm. As far as the detailing goes, very nice looking hand sculpt with the scoots down the course of the fingers. We see some alternate coloration here with like some grays popping up within the greens there of the hands. And then again, we can pick up on the hip bone over here, a slight alternate coloration, and similar to all of them, again, it's very inconsistent from one side to the other. With the Stygimoloch and the Pterosaur, like you see a certain coloration on one side that you don't see as visibly on the other side. Like right here, we really see that kind of like pinkish tone or like that peach type color. And then when you turn it, you don't see that over here. It's weird how every single one of these figures that are this kind of rubbery style have all had that same thing going on. So whoever paints them just really doesn't care, it seems. You can see that we also have some shades of brown here as you get further down into the stomach. You can also see it here on the underside, which is something that I didn't really take note of too much on the previous side. We yet again have some muscle definition back here in the thigh and calf region. Again, you can pick out the knee a little bit right there. Some more of those brown stripes, which yet again are kind of meant to highlight the muscle definition, but really don't do that. They just kind of obscure it almost. You can see some very nice bends in the foot down here in the toes as the dinosaur is walking along. Very nice, very realistic looking positioning, I think, for the foot. It looks really good, very bird-like yet again. And then we move back up here into the tail. You can see some skin wrinkles and skin stretching and stuff, showing off some of the movement there with the leg kind of reacting with the movement there in the tail. Another area of that splotchy brown as we move out the course of the tail with that really nice bend in the tail. So honestly, it's a really nicely sculpted Oviraptor. Like even the egg itself sports some beautiful texturing, but the paintwork that we've got for the Oviraptor is certainly not the most appealing, and I feel like could be improved upon greatly. But regardless, definitely a fun figure. And now that I have taken the stand off, I'm very intrigued to see how well the figure can stand. So it actually stands really nicely, which is definitely a plus. Similar to the Stiggy Moloch, I was, concerned about that one standing, but it stood really well. This Oviraptor is exactly the same case, so that is definitely a plus. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the beak here, you're looking at about 10 inches, pretty much on the dot, or about 25.5 centimeters. And then for a height, just shy of 6 inches, maybe a little over 5 3/4 inches, I would say, or about the 15 centimeter mark. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Oviraptor figure, and you can see without question it is definitely a sizable Oviraptor. As far as Oviraptor figures go, this is without question the largest one in my collection, so that is definitely something that's pretty cool about this figure specifically, and hopefully in comparison to these guys right here, you'll certainly be able to tell that this is a pretty sizable figure, and I think I only paid like $12 or $13 maybe tops for this, so it's a pretty good price for something that has some pretty good size to it. So this random unknown unbranded Oviraptor figure from Aliexpress is another very fun figure, but I think the theme of these figures is that we get a really nice sculpt, not so great paint, because continuously on all of them, except for maybe the Pterosaur, I think the Pterosaur was okay paint-wise, but the majority of these figures have had some pretty nicely sculpted out detail, and overall a very appealing and quite sizable, honestly, sculpt, but the paint has been fairly sloppy and just not very appealing on all of them. So yet another of the many figures I have here that are basically screaming for me to repaint them. This one is pretty much following that same trend of not so great paintwork, as I'm not a huge fan of the tones of green used. I don't like the random brown stripes throughout the course of the body. The feathers look okay. I would have preferred more feathers on the figure, but what we have there is okay, and it looks alright paint-wise, but would have looked better if there was like some kind of color difference on the underside of the feathers. And I do like the coloration of the crest and stuff, but that's really about it. I don't really care for any of the other coloration on the figure in general. The sculpt, though, is really beautifully done. Maybe not your most updated version or scientifically accurate version of an Oviraptor, but still really highly detailed, sporting a pretty fun appearance as it clearly is running away, and honestly has that look of not only fear, but you can also see that the head is turned to look back as the dinosaur is running away, almost looking back to say, are you following me? Whoever it stole its egg from, like it's being chased by some sort of dinosaur, and is currently trying to escape, but at the same time wants to keep its eye on whatever is trailing behind it. So that was a really cool idea on the part of whoever created this. I do really quite like that, because it almost creates a scene for you with your figures, so that's definitely a plus. The sculpt in general is a plus in my opinion. Again, not the most accurate Oviraptor, but it's very nicely detailed. The only thing I'm not a big fan of, honestly, is the paint. I think the paint is just hideous pretty much throughout the entire course of the figure, but pretty darn cool. Random unknown Oviraptor. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to Aliexpress where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link. Make sure you go order this very cool Oviraptor, and like, comment, and subscribe before you do. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.